Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and KISMA. I'm Nick, and today we are continuing the journey with The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And this week we are talking about the methods of self-sabotage.
Hello and welcome to Illumination Podcast with Nick and KISMA, bringing you ancient wisdom for modern day success so that you can have the mindset to get your life and business set.
As always, thank you for tuning in. And if you're new to the podcast, take a quick second to hit the subscribe button in iTunes, SoundCloud, or Stitcher. If you want to get the inside info for this and every episode, as well as some free gifts, go to illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. And now let's dive in to get your mindset for your life and business set. Hello, KISMA.
Well, hello.
Self-sabotage.
So many ways. The list goes on and on.
I don't know that we can do an exhaustive list.
We're going to hit the top 10 for sure. And we are going to bust those sabotager thingies, everyone.
Yeah.
No more.
Yeah. We're definitely going to shed some light on this. And it's going to give you some ideas about where to look when these things start showing up. They're things, some of these are a little sneaky, to say the least.
Total sneaks.
So, I mean, that's the whole nature of this game, is that it's a little bit of a sneaky game. That
you don't know what's happening until you're upside down all around. You wonder what went on.
That's right. You know, I've been thinking a little bit before we dive into that. I've been thinking a little bit about that zone of genius and just how instructive the ultimate life tool can be for that.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about it for myself, actually, and I was like, wow, it really shows you so much of how you're built and what your natural styles are. And what I've noticed about that is, like, everybody will have access to several different styles, but what's unique about it is you won't ever be in two styles at once. You'll use them. Mm-hmm. So many times people find one that works and they go with it. And I call that you're stuck in one gear.
Oh, that's good.
Right. And what that does is it gives you access to different parts of yourself and how to move in and through that. And to me, that's where the genius really comes through, of like, well, what is the uniqueness of these gifts and how do I use them in my way and in my life and in the context of my life? It gives such a great starting point for that, to really get a look at, like, hey, this is how I'm built.
Yeah. The truthfulness of you. And if you're interested in taking and having an assessment, definitely go to the show notes, because we've got a link there. You can do the Ultimate Life Tool with Nick. It's a great assessment.
Yeah. And I put it together in a really great way to make it very comprehensive and really help it to land.
Makes so much sense about who we are and what we are and how we operate, what's authentic and what isn't, what's genius and what is not.
Yeah. And as I was reading through these and preparing for this episode too, I started to notice, like, oh, there are certain aspects, there are certain styles in there that will be more prone to certain ones of these in certain ways. And I thought, oh, that's very interesting how that goes. So we're going to roll through these and just talk about them. Like we said, it's not an exhaustive list, but this is going to give some really good indicators of where to look when they start showing up. First one, he spends quite a bit of time on this one, actually. Worry.
Oh, worry. Oh, so annoying.
Worrying is usually a sign that we're upper limiting. It is usually not a sign that we're thinking about something useful. The crucial sign that we're worrying unnecessarily is when we're worrying about something that we have no control over. That's a big part. And that's part of the whole process that he walks you through in this section, is like how to determine if your worry has any value and how to redirect yourself.
There are times we're going to have a little worry about life. But also the thing I want everyone to get is worry is such an active state. It is building like this thick negative thought flow. It's congesting the energy. It's really an active state. And that piece about worrying about something we can't control means like the whole ship has tipped.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah. Yeah. I read a blog by Seth Godin recently. I love his blog. And the Mystic's Message was a little inspired by that. But he talks about, if you can't see how it could fail, you have a problem. Right. So, but that's different from worry. Like that's looking at something objectively and saying, okay, like here are the vulnerabilities, that's different. So we're not talking about that. We're talking about things are starting to go well. And then all of a sudden that little worry machine kicks up in your back of your head. And it's like, well, what about this? And what about that? And what about the other thing?
Upper limiter.
And I think to that end, it is worth it to just explore a few of these. Is there any action that I can take right now to make a positive difference?
That's great because
Right.
action will feel, again, accomplishment. It tells the brain you completed something. It kind of gets you back into the moment.
Yeah. If this is a really big thing for you, know that in the ultimate life tool, there is actually a driver that is about creating protection. And so this worry thing will really show up for people with that in a really loud way, and it'll set fire really fast. You'll be like, whoa,
panic.
So it's something to look for and realize that, there's something happening there. And that is an incredibly valuable question to ask. Is there any action I can take right now to make a positive difference? What can I do? Is there anything I can do? No, there's nothing I can do. Remember that time when you were worried about Zoe on the plane? Like I remember it's like, okay, it was interesting. That was an interesting instance for me because you got, you were up, like you got out of bed but you were up and you were worried about it regardless, but you did something.
Yeah, I know. I was called up. I was called awake and called to go and do what I do.
It wasn't just your typical worry.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And then you went and did something.
I did what I do, and
Casted
it was
a spell.
okay. It was okay.
Yeah, it was okay.
I mean, there was something, but it wasn't. It was so not a big deal.
Yeah. Well, that is something, to be said. Like, is there something that you can do when you're worried about people or worried about what's going to happen to them? It's like, you
can pray, you can meditate, you can do, and then you got to get out of your worry.
That's right. Like, do what you need to do. But that can't be your life. You have a life to live.
And there's a difference between worrying and praying, by the way, everyone.
Yeah. What you can do right now. Like I notice myself worrying about something. I let go of the worry thoughts, shifting my focus away from them. I wonder what positive new thing is trying to come into being.
Nice. Release to receive.
It's so good. Release to receive. That is so good. What positive new thing is trying to come into being? This is the question that very few people I know would ever ask, right? Like, hey, I'm starting to really worry a lot. I wonder what awesome thing is trying to happen in my life.
We just don't go there.
Nobody
We're like, what else can I worry about?
I usually this is him talking through it. I usually get a body feeling, not a thought or idea of where that positive new thing is trying to come through. He's kind of more tapped into his body.
Yeah.
It might just come to you.
Yeah, I would just hear it.
Yeah. It could come in a lot of different ways. It might show up in your world.
Yeah. And for everyone listening, just like be receptive to it. It's going to show. It's going to come through.
Well, yeah, I'm so glad you said that. I wonder what positive new thing is trying to come into being, right? That's the part where it's like, I wonder if I were super receptive to that, right? What could show up? And then like he said, he notices it in his body. You might hear it. You might see it. Who knows? I open my focus to feel that body feeling deeply. So he goes back into the body. But if you see it or if you feel it or you hear something, like tune in
and listen.
Yeah. I let myself feel it deeply for as long as I possibly can. Later, I often get an idea of the positive thing that was trying to come through. So for him, what he's describing is he doesn't even get the answer in the moment, but he gives himself this little process and then lets it show up.
Right.
So it really is about getting out of that worry state, like giving yourself some mechanism to get out of that worry state and ask that question, I wonder what awesome thing is trying to happen right now that I'm just worrying all over.
Yeah. Can't let it in. So good.
Yeah. Really, really good. The next one we've talked about a lot on this show, criticism and blame.
Get off the blame train.
That's a good one. I like that, a little kismatic song. Criticism and blame. I mentioned earlier that worry thoughts have absolutely nothing to do with reality. That's true for criticism too. In other words, when we criticize something, it usually doesn't have anything to do with the thing that we're criticizing. When we blame someone or something, we're doing it because we've hit our upper limit and are trying to retard the flow of positive energy.
Man, just trying to slow down and congest the flow of positive energy because we're scared to go into our zone of genius.
Yeah.
So let's just blame everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And that's a great moment of like where you're about to make that breakthrough. Oftentimes there is some friction or some resistance around those breakthrough moments. And if this is one of your go-tos, you'll start to look at what everybody else isn't doing or what they're doing wrong or how they're holding you back. And then you'll create a break in the relationship and then everything will start to fall apart and then you'll be back where you started. That's criticism and blame.
And it becomes a rinse and repeat pattern that the subconscious knows and will take you through if you do not choose to get out of it.
Yeah. It's it piles up with resentment, right? Because then there's just a lot of hurt feelings, right? And, you know, let's be honest, we don't always clean those things up as well as we could. And then you've got resentment on top of it. And then it's just that much more potent the next time it comes around. So it's like, it really is a downward spiral. And it happens, like, this is something that can happen with people like unconsciously, right? Not necessarily the pattern of like, oh, I'm going to criticize people because I'm like feeling, you know, we're about to make a leap. You know?
It's a really fast, abrupt distraction away from something amazing.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting that you said that, distraction, because a lot of times people distract themselves with things like social media. But I wonder, what's the conversation going on in the head while they're doing that?
Yeah, the criticism, blame, or it just shows up in so many ways.
So many ways. But that's a really interesting one, how it's tied into the distractification. So you start distractifying, and then, you know, and like, for what purpose? Like, oh, you know, maybe there's nothing really present, or maybe that's just my best place to go find some criticism and blame. You know, it's like there's something that's you're rewarded with around that, and that something is comfort.
Yeah,
because that's the way that we know, you know, the way that we've been doing it. The next one he talks about here is deflecting. Yeah, this is an interesting one. Most of us crimp the flow of positive energy by avoiding it altogether. The mechanism we use is what I call deflection. It's so common, we almost take it for granted in human life. Think how many times you've heard conversations like the following example of deflection. This is such a great one because he talks about that in another place. This is a really good one. You did a great job on that presentation. Nah, I ran out of time, had to leave out some of the best stuff.
My slides sucked.
Yeah. Still, I noticed that people were really paying attention. I'm glad they weren't paying too close of attention, because they would have seen more places where I messed up, right? It's like somebody's trying, like
a receiving problem.
Yeah.
A receiving problem.
Totally. Because that receiving, it's like, if you're to really allow yourself to receive that, it feels awesome.
It feels awesome. Thank you. And next one will be even better. Let's go. But now we got to deflect. Ooh, painful.
Yeah, that's one. It might not be somebody's major driver, right? In the ULT, it might not be that, but everybody will have something in that needs some kind of appreciation, right?
Sure. Well, humans just need recognition and appreciation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like if you have a zero, you know, if you have a zero in that in the ULT, like that's something that we look at and be like, I wonder where this person might be disconnecting. But yeah, it's like, I love how he puts it, crimp the flow of positive energy. It's like, no, we're not letting that in, you know? Yeah. So they just cut it off before it even gets a chance to start. Right. This is the one I was thinking of, the golf. Cause my dad, you know, it's one of the things with my dad is, he gets his personal development in the golf course.
That's cool.
Yeah. You know, he just wants to enjoy, he's been golfing for years and that, and, it's just such a mental game, you know? And here's how it goes. A nice shot, Al. Nah, I didn't make full content. Beautiful putt, Bob. It's about time I got one in. My putting has been horrible all day. Right? It's like so many times, like somebody will have a success and it's like, oh, well, finally, you know, it's like they find some way to dump on it.
Yeah.
And the more that you dump on it, that's the deflection.
That's the energy of the success.
And what you can do instead is actually just, okay, pause, take a breath, because you gotta have to retrain yourself to actually receive that.
To receive and say thank you. Just start with thank you.
Just start with thank you.
And then be quiet.
Yeah.
And then close the mouth. Thank you. Breathe.
Yeah. Even better, like expert tips, if you like look that person in the eye and say, thank you.
That means a lot.
It really does. You don't have to say more than that. That's such a great listening. Just start there.
Thank you is a complete sentence.
If you want to, thank you is a complete sentence. If you want to add more to it, like really think that through, just start with saying thank you and see how that feels. No, it's not necessarily an easy thing to do. I know I used to do that one a lot. That was a thing for me. I'm not sure if I learned it from my dad or if I just
possibly,
you know, kind of picked it up along the way, but I noticed it when I was reading the book. I noticed that it showed up a lot in my music career.
Yeah, we do that in music. Oh, I don't know. I was slightly out of tune on that G sharp.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's still, you know, whatever.
Sometimes I think the deflecting is a cry for more compliments. It's like, oh, no, it wasn't that good, because we actually want to be fed more.
Right. You know, that's an interesting thing that you're pointing out. Like, you want more, but the whole reason you want more is because you're not letting it in.
And you're not letting it in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Funny.
Yeah.
Us humans. Hashtag humans. Okay, what's next? This is so fun.
Oh, the next one. You're going to love this one. Squabbling.
Squabbling. Like chickens?
Arguments are one of the most common ways of bringing yourself down when you've hit your upper limit. When things are going well, you can crimp the flow of positive energy quickly by starting a conflict. Then the conflict develops a life of its own, lasting for hours, days, or even years. The net effect, you drop back down into your zone of competence or zone of excellence. Genius takes a back seat.
Mm-hmm. Genius will take a back seat. Maybe it'll be in the trunk.
Yeah.
It'll be in the boot.
It's because you've got something else. It's like it's another distraction, you know? So of course you're not going to be thinking about your zone of genius because
I feel like all of these are distractions because right in front of you is a big leap.
Yeah.
And that big leap can be scary. It can be the first unknown. It can be the place where people start judging you or talking or raving about you. But somewhere it's like, I'm not sure. So I'm going to get distracted and start doing these weird things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like this one can tie in really close with the blame and criticism because that's a really great way that, you know, that it starts. You start blaming, criticizing somebody and it sets off an argument, you know, really quickly. Or people just find a reason, you know, to argue. Like it just pops right up. It's so easy to get stuck in that. You know, why are you making me so miserable? This problem is entirely your fault. Like nobody ever says, wow, thanks for pointing that out. No, like that's setting up an argument, you know, and then it just goes and goes right down the line. Yeah. In this section too, he talks quite a bit about victimization and how it's like basically a race to the bottom, like who can out victim one another.
Oh man, it becomes an addiction.
Yeah.
How out victim-y can I get?
Yeah. I've mentioned this in previous episodes and I could never remember where I saw it. Like this is where I saw it. So when there's a conflict, understanding the physics of arguments will reveal how conflicts, whether between a couple, board members, countries, or religious groups, can be resolved. In fact, it's the only way I've ever found that will resolve conflicts permanently. The key insight, each entity in a situation represents 100%. So each entity in a conflict has 100% of the responsibility for resolving the conflict. In other words, person A is a whole and complete 100%, and person B is a whole and complete 100%. If two people are involved, there is 200% responsibility to be divided up. The fatal mistake is thinking that there is 100% of responsibility to be divided up. This approach requires each person to take some portion of the 100%. It's a massive thinking error that causes massive problems because it leads to endless jockeying for victim position.
Really good.
This is a game changer.
It really is in communication.
Oh my gosh.
Partnerships.
I can't even tell you.
Relationships.
I've come back to it so many times and it really did, like that little paragraph right there took the whole squabbling thing. Like it just short circuited that whole conversation.
I do notice you squabble less with me. It's very nice.
Very interesting how you phrase that. Thank you for that. Surely. Yeah, I'm thank you. But the reason that it does is because it puts each person fully in. And if you can get both people on board with that,
that's the key.
That's a real game changer. But even if you just do it for yourself, you will find yourself in a much more empowered position and it will short circuit the squabbling outside of that because the other person's they will generally sense that you're stepping in with a solution.
Well, and it's putting your intellect to service too, which is always a better place to be.
Yeah, I can guarantee, yes, exactly. And I can guarantee that if you're not doing that and you're trying to offload, a certain percentage onto that other person, there's going to be a squabble around that of like, no, I'm not 68%. I'm only 62% responsible.
Yeah,
it's like, come on.
Down
like just
100%. 100%.
Right.
I love
Extreme ownership comes back to that one. All right. This is a really, really important one. Getting sick and getting hurt.
Rough, man.
Now, this is something that let's consider this for a second. He's written this book. He's seen this one enough times that it has made its way into the book.
And it's really worth reading the book for this, everyone, because a few of the stories around it are very compelling.
Exactly. So the reason that I think this one is so important is because it's pretty much an airtight excuse to quit or to spin things out. Right? I'm sick. I'm really sick. There are not too many people in your life who will say, oh no, you should really, you were probably creating that yourself and you should probably just, push through it. No, like you're sick. Like you need to get better.
Stay home and rest.
Yeah.
You've got the flu. Stay home and rest.
Yeah. But people don't generally ask the question behind that of like,
I wonder why.
Things are going pretty well.
Yeah.
I wonder why I might be getting sick right now.
And there are times where the kids come home with the flu and you get the flu. Like, there is that reality.
Yeah, totally. Learn energy mastery. You won't have to deal with it.
Yeah, true. And it's worth looking at those times where, and it when you glance back, it's like, oh yeah, I was right there. I was going to give a presentation. I was going to do this, or I was going to have a job interview. Or I was going to start a new job and I got sick.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, and one of the ways that this played out in my life is while I'll be working towards something or we're in a really great period of activity, right? And then I can kind of feel it, like, I can kind of feel something. And then sure enough, as soon as I'm done and complete with that, I'm sick. Or I would get sick. This was years ago.
Yeah.
I would get sick, right? And what does that do? Like it kills all the momentum. Like when you've got something really, it's not saying don't take a pause, but when you've got all that momentum behind you, that's what you want to take into your zone of genius.
Right.
Those are the things that really propel you. It's like you've done all this work to clear your plate and to get everything in motion.
Right.
And certainly that takes a lot of effort. And then when you really have an opportunity to take it and run with it, boom,
right.
Sick.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to argue with that. Oh, you broke your leg? No, what a horrible accident.
What a horrible accident.
Interesting though. It's like, but when these things happen, like the accidents, I don't personally believe in accidents. I believe in unfortunate events, but something occurred in that moment. I've wrecked enough cars to know that yes, I did not mean for those to happen, but there were moments where I checked out and that happened.
Please don't do that anymore.
No, I haven't wrecked a car in years. It's been many years.
Okay.
You have nothing to worry about. Oh, see the worry? She's getting into the worry, everybody.
I'm like cutting cords over here, guys.
This is a little bit of a tricky one to explore. People can really have resistance around this. So what I'd invite you to do, if you are having patterns of illness, number one is learn energy mastery because it'll really help with that. But if you're going to explore this on a deeper level, what you want to do is just approach it with a childlike curiosity. Hey, I wonder if.
Is it related?
Yeah.
Could it be related? Don't make it wrong.
Right.
And certainly don't make yourself wrong. Just be like, is it related?
Yeah.
Or what if it is?
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder.
It's an easy opening to explure.
Yeah. Yeah. If you do it that way, it'll be way more useful for you. I wonder what awesome thing is trying to come into my life, that I'm
scared of.
Yeah, that I'm scared of. Or just when I was just about there and just got sick, to spin it out. If that's a pattern, that is something that you really want to look at because over time that can really add up.
Take a toll for sure.
And he gives these things, he calls them the 3 Ps here. Your exploration will go easier if you have a map. The map I use is what we call the 3 Ps: punishment, prevention, and protection. So if something's going really well and you're that person who doesn't deserve it, and you're fundamentally flawed, and then physical pain, right? It can show up in migraines. It can show up in injury or something like that. So it's a form of punishment. It's like self-punishment, basically. Prevention is kind of what we talked about. It's like, oh, things are going well. Like I just might get there. Oh, we better sabotage in a way that nobody could argue with. I'm going to get really sick, right? And protection, it's protecting yourself from what is on the other side of that
level.
The unknown or whatever that might be.
Oh, those are fascinating. So basically, we want to look at these. We want to examine them and see what might be happening or a pattern in our life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what you're looking for. So this is another one where if you just, listen back and tune in with your body and see which one of these really resonates with you. Pick one. Right. That is a really prevalent pattern in your life. You've probably, if I know our listeners, you've got a very unique little iteration of it that you've mapped out in your life, and how that works. And set that aside, and just, okay, let me really examine this. Just like KISMA described, like you did such a great, like how to approach that with curiosity. Because otherwise you wind up in what he calls here an integrity breach.
Right.
Which is basically where you wind up just telling yourself little lies.
Yeah.
And you really become out of integrity with yourself, saying one thing and doing another.
Right. And it prevents you from stepping into the zone of genius.
Yeah, exactly.
So what do we do here?
Well, I think it's a great idea to just make a list.
Make a list.
So as you're listening back and tapping into those things, like make a list, notice the ones that really resonate from you, and then make a list about how that shows up. To list through them here: worrying, blame and criticism, getting sick or hurt, squabbling. This is one we didn't talk too much about, is hiding significant feelings. So it's not listening to yourself. That's the integrity breach. Like you're telling these little lies to yourself about like what's really true. Like one of those, it's fine.
It's fine when it's not fine.
And when it's not, and it's not. It's totally not. Not keeping agreements, that's another one. If you see yourself not keeping agreements, that's a really big one. And that's super important this time of year. Like this episode's coming out, towards the end of January.
Right.
And that's a time when those resolutions start to go by the wayside and you stop keeping those agreements.
Keep agreements.
Not speaking significant truths to the relevant people, and deflecting.
Yeah.
It's just not allowing it in. So those are, just make a list. Like start there.
Start there, because awareness is key, everyone, right? It's like Swamiji would always say, it's one thing to be ill. It's another thing to be ill and not know it. So it's one thing to have upper limiters. It's another thing to have them and not know them. And so once you begin to have a pulse, then the way out, of course, we have so many tools and things. Nick mentioned the Ultimate Life Tool and Energy Mastery. Check the show notes for links to that, or email hello@illuminationpodcast.com. And that awareness followed by the wonderment, kind of this joyful, playful, like, well, what if that is an upper limiter? And what if I didn't have to live with that? Right? Which leads me to my illuminated thought, which is, I said it earlier, release to receive. Release to receive, but we have to be aware in order to release. And then there's room for receptivity. And in this point, this is receiving your zone of genius.
That is so good. Well, if you enjoyed this episode, definitely share it out. We'd love that. Thank you so much for being a listener.
And go back and listen to the first 2 in the series. And next week, we will be bringing number 4 in the series, which is going to be a mind bender. A mind bender. Yeah. It's one that we felt was really important because it's a conversation that people are always having around time. Yeah. And this is a very, very interesting take on how to work with time. Nice. So tune in next week. Until then, sending you much love, happiness, joy, Happy New Year, and peace. Namaste. Hey, thanks for jamming with us today. And if you enjoy Illumination Podcast, please go ahead and share it with someone you love. Give us a rating, review, download our podcast. And remember, you can find us at illuminationacademy.net/podcasts. Talk to you soon. Namaste.